The moment has finally arrived. The one time that I know that I don't have to say that this episode is about the men or it's about the women, because on either instances that I'm about to bring up, both genders are particularly responsible, or at least both genders are to be held accountable. And I really can't even just pick a side on this one. Like this one, I practically have to skirt the middle, but I still do get to speak for the guys, kind of like my own comfort zone. Although the interesting part is that even though I'm supposed to be in my own comfort zone in some way, I do feel a little uncomfortable about some of the stuff I'll be talking about. Mostly because I think it involves a little bit of the finances, but mostly because I'm picking on an age-old tradition. But that said, before I can get into any of that, I want to at least bring in some very interesting facts that involve chickens, because I have a post here on how you can actually hypnotize chickens using something as simple as a straight line, which seems a little bit odd to me, because when you go and you start reading a title like "Chickens Enter a State of Hypnosis When They See a Line Drawn in Front of Them," I start to get a little bit weirded out, because personally, with the daily checks that I do with my cock, it's usually not hypnotized by straight lines or a straight line. It's usually hypnotized by curves. So I don't know what the fuck these guys are saying.
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
And fortunately enough, I'm not the only person that feels that this isn't the same thing with them. Like, even John Legend said it himself on the song All of Me, all your curves and all your edges. He never said nothing about straight lines. This guy was talking about giving your all to me, and he did not at any point mention a straight line, which clearly shows that the hypnosis that comes with straight lines clearly doesn't work on him as well. And I get it, he's not a chicken, but I do tend to think that he also has a cock. So if his cock doesn't respond to straight lines and my cock doesn't respond to straight lines, I tend to think that there's a lot more guys whose cocks don't respond to straight lines. Although, then again, let me just read the story real quick. So it says, and I quote, "Drawing a line near the ground with its head down can lead to the hypnotization or trance of a chicken. In this state, the chicken will be fixated on the line, remaining completely still for up to 30 minutes. This phenomenon is referred to as tonic immobility, a natural condition of partial paralysis observed in certain animals when faced with a threat. It serves as a defensive mechanism, though somewhat inadequately, as it imitates a state of death to evade danger." End quote. Okay, normally when my cock goes into a trance because it's been hypnotized by curves, it's not usually in a state of danger. I think it's mostly from a state of suffocation or immersion, if you want to be a little bit more specific. Although then again, I don't think it's just the cocks. Even with the chicks don't necessarily want something that is straight. Usually they get attracted to something that is long, that is hard, but it usually tends to have a little bit of a curve, because nature does not usually do very well with perfectly straight lines. So there has to be a curve somewhere. So with that said, I don't know what chickens are busy running this, particular test or start on, but from what I can gather over here, if the cocks aren't responding to it, if the chicks don't respond to it as well, then clearly there's a bunch of cap over here, because I'm guessing Mother Hen probably won't respond to it either. But what she might respond to is this podcast, which I should have started in a much better way, lifting my head up like the cock that I know that I have, in a very nice manner, almost as if to say, "Welcome to Break Time on West Side, your number one breakdown podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who knows what his cockadoodle do." Whatever the fuck that means. I don't even know what the fuck I just said there. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show should have started with a little less cock talk, but there was a chicken fact here that I just needed to use. Like, I had been holding it for a couple of weeks, and I felt like it was just gonna go to waste without people knowing about it. And telling people that you can hypnotize a chicken by drawing a straight line is very pointless information. So if you can add additional feedback like, cocks are hypnotized by curves and shit, you can help the society a little bit better. But still, even with that said, I do know that some people have other tips to save the society, facts like these, weird news and shit like that. Or sometimes they even want us to discuss stuff on the podcast itself as a main topic or something to rant about. And the place to send all of that info is via the DMs of @Breakdown on Westside on Facebook or on IG. The DMs are always open. On Twitter, you can send it to @BagakaTheD. That is my personal Twitter handle. And I would be more than happy to take it from there and deal with it in the most necessary manner, because there is so much to be spoken about. I actually even had issues deciding on what to talk about today. Just feels like there's so much. And on the list of so much that I could have spoken about is the apparent reports that Kim K is apparently, or at least reportedly, embarrassed by Kanye's bear clappers going viral because she doesn't know how she's gonna explain it to the kids. Now, to give you guys a little bit of context, sometime over the course of last week, there was a photo of Kanye West on a boat and his ass cheeks were shown through the cutoff area of his coat. And some people believe that while he was on the boat in Italy, where the picture itself was actually taken, he was actually getting some head. Because the babe just popped up her head at some point and the guy's ass cheeks were sort of out there. So the belief is, dude dropped his trousers, she was sucking him off. And someone managed to get a picture of I don't know if I can call it his butt crack extended version or some shit. And yeah, apparently Kim K is very embarrassed and she doesn't know how she's going to explain this to the kids, which I find to be particularly odd. It's very, very odd. Now, I'm just gonna read the whole story from where I got this from, then I can give my thoughts on it. So it says, and I quote, "According to sources, it appears that Kim K is a bit embarrassed that Kanye had his clappers out on a piece of wood. According to page 6, she reportedly believes that something clearly isn't right with West, who is currently vacationing with his wife, Bianca Sensori. Kim's been so worried about the new pics that have come out with Bianca, how will she explain it all to the kids?" The source said. She's embarrassed and worried for him. It's important to note that Kim K's booty is widely available on the World Wide Web as well. It appears that Kanye may have been getting topped off at the time. End quote. Now, that having been said, and her feeling a bit embarrassed about Kanye West's cheeks being online, I have a couple of questions, because this is not a situation of the pot calling the kettle black. This is a situation of Snow looking at cocaine and wondering if they're the same thing. At least in my head, that's what it sounded like. And I don't know how smart that sounds, but you're just gonna listen to me so that I can, cook with this one. Because do you guys remember, I think it was People magazine? That photo that she had where she was shooting champagne from her hands and there was a wine glass on her ass cheeks and it was landing there. And that was supposedly the photo that quote unquote broke the internet. That was the very first time that it was actually a statement, broke the internet. Do you guys remember that time? Wasn't that Kim's clappers that were out there on the internet? Should we go to all the other many instances where she posted photos showing most of her nude self online and maybe she deleted them or maybe she kept them for a while and it was all for relevance? Is she not embarrassed trying to explain that to the kids? Actually, even with that one sort of all said and done, because I was trying to avoid this one, will she be embarrassed telling her kids that, the only reason that the family wealth is the family wealth is because she had to put her cheeks online and record herself having sex a couple of different times and their grandmother had to watch it and then approve it because that was how they would kickstart their reality TV show Life, which gave them millions of dollars an episode? I don't know. Is she going to be embarrassed when she's busy saying all that shit? I feel like Kanye's situation isn't even all that bad, because when I'm looking at the photo itself, you can barely see an ass cheek. It's literally just the line that separates both booty holes and a little bit of his skin that's showing. At the end of the day, that's mostly nothing. You can call it a wardrobe malfunction, you can call it being stylish. Granted, this is the same person that made homeless clothing look fashionable way back in the day when Kanye decided to go into fashion design and shit. So if anything, you can just rule this off as your father is trying to be stylish. But your situation is way worse. Trying to explain to your children that, you had to get fucked, then that shit was put on the internet for you guys to build $1 billion empire is a little bit harder to explain to children. especially when they become teenagers and people start talking about how they beat their meats to the mother. I feel like that one's a little bit harder to explain, and there is no way, shape or form where you can look at all of this as a kid and be like, you know what, my mother did it for the family, so it's good. So either way, I want to leave it at that because I don't think the children are teenagers yet, and move on to something that affects us as adults. Now, moving things on, over the course of the week, I stumbled onto an interesting Nation article. Now, it was done by the man known as Eddie Ashioya, the same guy whose article I dealt with a couple of weeks back on women and partying and how the guys won't be with them after they're done partying and shit. Now, this past weekend, I stumbled onto another article of his, which was titled, and I quote, "Men, it's time the women paid bills." Now, it was a particularly interesting article on dating and dates and, the whole paying of the bills thing and how much of an issue it can be for a lot of us guys. Now, I'm going to read the article itself. I'm going to make sure I just focus on the most important bits because I don't want to get a lot of fluff and take too long. So it says, and I quote, "A lady recently invited me for a prospective lunch. I was excited that finally Mekatililiwa Menza's teachings had not been in vain. At the end of the date, when the waiters brought the bill, we sat there looking at each other. I started playing with my phone. She suddenly developed an urge to go to the toilet. For 7 minutes, we played this game that the government is playing with us to see who will blink first. And then she said, if you don't have enough money, maybe we should split the bill." We? I could feel the spirit of Nabi Elijah Masinde Muliro rising in me. If I don't have enough money, but you invited me to this date, I am not ashamed to say that in my head. I even use the word that rhymes with which but doesn't start with a W. I got my ass handed to me that day, and a valuable lesson in adulting. Everyone expects the man to pay. It does not matter if the woman sitting across the table looks like she's on her final lap around the earth, they will still expect you to pay the bill. I fear for my younger brothers who are getting into the dating scene. If you thought millennial women are materialistic, wait until you meet Gen Zs. These ones, with their baggy clothes and obsession for chasing the bag, will leave you in the desert without water. Then post it on TikTok. Dating in modern Kenya is expensive, especially this side with the avocados. How does dating even work today? Is it just taking someone for food and talking about how this serikali itatumaliza? That's boring and common. My theory is that the last generation of courtship died with our grandparents, those who are not drinking maziwa ya nyayo, but gave birth to those drinking maziwa ya nyayo. After that, our parents just killed dating and we buried it. Gen Zs, meanwhile, only hear of the term dating when they're checking their calendars for rent, classes and periods. Now we're in free fall. While in the past we would wait for 90 days to get to the bedroom, now it's more of, can you finish eating so I eat you? So yeah, since we've commercialized ourselves, let's live in this new financial world where relationships exist to help you afford food so you don't die, where marriage is a side effect and not the goal. And these are just for the broke ones. The employed working class ladies were cast out of heaven with Lucifer. Maybe I'm wrong, but show me a working class lady who does not speak of high value man and tables, and I will show you how to rise from a chicken to a chicken seller next week. Jokes aside, men, it's time to put yourself first. If the commercialization of the dating space has taught me anything, it is this. Everything has a price. It's common wisdom. The people who keep saying that money isn't everything are the guys with no money at all. And for the foreseeable future, the prospects are not looking good. It's especially heartbreaking when you're young and the little monies you get from your deals, you spend it all on women. Do not. I am telling you. In fact, I am instructing you by the powers vested in me. Invest in yourself, comrade. I'm not an intolerant person, okay? But there are certain things that I struggle with. If you ask me out, then expect me to pay for the date, for example. We are not going to be friends, much less lovers. Ladies, I have come to understand, do not care whether you have money or not. Neither should you. They expect baby girl treatment. You're 36, Michelle. Grow up. The country's at the brink of a war, and after they're done with the food, if you're not buying drinks, how are they supposed to give it up? As a Ugandan acquaintance recently reminded me, in Africa relationships are spiritual warfare. This is not flesh and blood. We are up against principalities and powers. In fact, the spirit of Nabi Elijah Masinde Muliro has risen in me. Men, if she invites you out, leave your wallet at home. As a matter of fact, I want you to have the audacity of a broke Kenyan lady with 7 kgs of makeup, rent arrears, and a struggling TikTok account by asking her to send fare. To and fro, it's only fair. This Nairobi has become a feeding program, but it's only one side that is getting fat. That ends today. And I'll end quote it here. Mostly because I think there's a lot that I tried to get out and just stick to the main bits. Now, I don't know if maybe this is just a me thing, maybe I just don't seem to know a lot of diverse men out here, but I don't know. Besides this dude, I've never heard of any other guys who are supposedly taking women out on dates. Now, granted, I did at least start by saying that, maybe it's the fact that I just don't know these guys, but usually whenever people are talking about going on dates today, in this day and age of right now, usually it's the women that I'm conversing and having back and forths with regarding relationships and guys. Usually it's the women that are talking about when I'm going on dates, I've been going on dates for this and this long, and I've met these and these guys. Normally they talk about it, but I personally don't know any guys that actually take women out on dates as a first meeting thing anymore. I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, maybe it's just me, maybe I can call myself Gen Z even though I don't really like to do that. It kind of feels like it's a bit of a dated concept, especially with today. But all that said and done, do I really agree with what this guy said? I don't know. Okay, there's definitely quite a bit that needs to be unpacked from this. And it's not just the whole, if a babe calls you out on a date, you're still supposed to pay because you're the guy. There's definitely more things to put there. Now, first of all, I will be very straight up and honest. I've spoken about dating and going out on dates, and I do have very minimal experience in terms of going out on dates with women. Mostly because it's just not something that I normally resort to doing, because I tend to believe that it's a fairly dated thing. Or at least it's not particularly necessary in today's day and age. Whether you want to romanticize it or not, that's just a fact. You do not need to go on a date in today's day and age, or at least you don't need to go on the traditional version of a date in today's day and age, alright? Because when you look at the whole concept of going on a date and where it came from, it's some shit that started a little over 220 years ago, and for the most part, if you look at what has come up after it, at least over the course of time, you can actually see it as fairly unnecessary, in as much as it's a very traditional thing that a lot of women romanticize here and there. Because when you look at it way back in the day, dating actually started as a progression from women having to go and see a man with an adult or a sibling or a parent of some kind, or as they typically used to refer to them, a chaperone that would be there in the same room with them as the man is busy talking to them. Because way back in the day, a lot of relationships and partnerships used to be curated by the parents, and the children themselves, much as they were grown adults at this point, still didn't have that level of agency. But eventually the women now started being allowed to go out with these men on their own, and they would dress in this really nice and fancy way that would make them look very beautiful and aesthetic, and would make them seem very appealing to the guy that was taking them out on the date. And they'd plan to meet someplace public because you aren't supposed to go to a dude's house instantly, not unless if you want it to be called a whore. So you can clearly see that during those days there were a lot of limitations to it. But when you look at it over the course of the years, we're here right now and we have Netflix and chill. It's been such a massive gap between when dates actually started being a thing and the whole life of Netflix and chill that's there today. Because there's increased communication, there's a shit ton more freedom for adults, and you get to choose the partner that you want, and you can make that decision entirely on your own without anyone really being able to refute your decision. And so at this point, you'd be thinking, well, if you're now at a position in time where, your individual decision is a paramount thing, then dates should be more important than ever. Except that they're not. Because when dates were a big thing, first of all, there were boundaries for everything. And second of all, but more importantly, their forms of communication were actually a lot more dated. Like, first of all, they were a little bit more general, actually way more general, because, most of the stories were coming in through, area gossip and, the newspaper for the area. And when it came to direct person-to-person communication, like, people were busy communicating to each other via notes, via letters, and, the occasional phone call here and there. Hell, even when my parents were getting married, phones weren't actually a common thing. Like, if you had a phone and you could have a conversation for, an hour, you were balling. So you look at it today, and the fact that, not only have we moved away from just general communication, even though we still have newspaper articles and shit, nowadays most of the information that is disseminated, or at least that is spread to people, is done through targeting. And at the end of the day, you can kind of say that that's a pretty big part of the reason why people today in this day and age are very pathetic conversationalists, especially when it comes to the opposite gender. Because it's not like the kind of things that I see when I open YouTube are gonna be the same exact things that a babe that I'm interested in will see when she opens YouTube. Like, the kind of information that I'll be reading, the kind of information that I'll be seeing online will be very different from what she gets to see online, because there's a lot of targeting of stories and articles, because that usually comes with targeted ads. So you can't expect them to have conversations on pretty much the same things, not unless if you're talking about the government, which I think is a topic base that needs to be left at Uber driver level, so you shouldn't take it beyond there. And for the most part, it means that not unless if you guys have an interest in pretty much the same kinds of gossip, there's a pretty hard chance that you guys will actually be talking about the same exact things. So you have that. Then on top of that, the direct person-to-person communication is at its most affordable and practically free for so many people. So you find that it becomes so hard for you to actually see the need for a date, because okay, fine, yes, I go and I meet this woman and I say, let's have a date, next week Thursday at about 7, I'll pick you at this and this place, blah blah blah. That was back in the day. You could do that and you'll send each other letters, and when you're planning for the next date, you can decide to do it like 2-3 weeks later. But if you look at it today, if I want to go out for dinner with a babe and we're both interested in each other, I can pick up the phone right now and I'll call her and I'll ask her, what are you doing tonight? Or what are you doing tomorrow evening? And if she's open, she'll tell me. If she's not, she'll tell me as well. And we can plan for that shit and make it happen almost immediately. And when you take that minus the kind of boundaries that used to be there, you start to wonder if you really need to go on a date with this woman, or considering that, there's little to no boundaries in the name of, like talking stages and shit, can I just ask her to come over to my place and we can chill together, cuddle and lay pipe? Because at the end of the day, if pipe is the thing that I'm driving towards the entire time, if I can get it done today, then I might as well do it via Netflix and chill. And I know I'm the same person who's busy saying that Netflix and chill is the advancement of, the date, it's the evolution. Yet not too long ago, I was busy talking about how sex on the first date is what's killed a lot of relationships and it's messed up the dating market. And I still stand by my guns, even though both of those statements are contradicting. Yes, it is an evolution. It's not an evolution in the positive direction in terms of looking at the current results, but it's an evolution nonetheless. And I'm not here to talk about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing on this episode. I'm just talking about whether dates are becoming particularly outdated, Then there's the whole part about men handling the bill, which, granted, I know for a fact is a debate that has no end. People will never fully agree on a universal level about the whole men handling the bill and today's current society and shit like that. So I won't even try to engage in it. The only thing that I find particularly annoying about it is when there's a woman who's busy saying, as a man, it's your role to handle the bill, and the woman shouldn't handle the bill because you're the one that's taking her on a date, blah, blah, because it's the man's role, because he'll be the provider, blah, blah. Like, at the end of the day, I usually just bring it down to whether the both of you guys are earning or not. And beyond that, Like, it's not like when we're in the same house and I tell you to go make me a sandwich, you're particularly happy about doing that. Like, it's not like when you meet up with a babe and she's in the kitchen, you tell her to, do the dishes or some shit. Just because it's a babe's role to make sure that the house is well taken care of, blah, blah. You don't do that. So why the fuck is she busy trying to hammer that shit on you so early? Like, I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things that should never really be an issue. Because as a guy, if paying the bill for the date, provided people weren't going all out, is going to be an issue, then maybe going on dates probably shouldn't be something that you're doing. But in the very same breath, if you're a woman and you're going out on a date with the expectation that it's only the man who's supposed to be paying the bill and you shouldn't even spend a single dime and you're just supposed to look pretty, then maybe you shouldn't also be going out on dates today. So at the end of all of this, let me just conclude by saying that dates for the most part are practically outdated today. Because when you think about it, you don't really need to dress up so that you can go and impress someone that you expect to like you, whether you're well dressed up or shittily looking at the end of it. Because that in and of itself is a bit of an overestimation. We communicate so much today and it's fairly cheap, practically affordable, so you don't need to plan weeks or months in advance to meet someone that you could meet in the same day. Hell, to make things even better with video call, you can practically meet that person at just about any time. So instead of the two of you having to dress up, go to an establishment, try coming up with topics that you probably don't even know that much about, and then starting to fuss around about who gets to pay the bill, you guys can video call each other and do most of your interacting from there and get to know each other pretty quickly from there as well. Although to be honest, the main reason why I think that dates are pretty outdated is how many people do you really know today in this day and age who talk about first meeting their partner and taking them out on a date? Because to be honest, I don't really hear much about them. Then again, maybe I am too young and maybe I probably don't know jack shit about this, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime, on Westside, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.